There are 1 in 5 people that I meet that just think what we're doing is terrible and causing more divisiveness. And I fundamentally disagree with that. I think providing more transparency is always a good thing.
Welcome back, amazing people, to the Hopeful Majority. Today, I've got on a fascinating guest. He does a lot of things. He's a serial builder, he's a serial entrepreneur, and you wouldn't even guess his day job. He also happens to be a partner at a big law firm, Hush Blackwell. I'm so excited to welcome Prian Potts to the Hopeful Majority. We want to talk about one issue that has come up a lot through our audience, through our conversations, and that is campaign finance. Manu, we talk about polarization, we talk about people having conversations with people that are different than us, but how do we actually address issues that cause special interests to have excised influence over our government? And so I thought, who better to talk to than a lawyer, an entrepreneur, a builder, and apparently he does a lot more things that I just found out in the pre-prep call. And so maybe we might have to have him back. I'm so grateful for everybody listening every Monday, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your content. We're building this hopeful majority together. If you're sick and tired of the temperamental extremes controlling the microphone while the rest of us stay quiet, this is the show for you. So if you're on YouTube, like or subscribe. If you're on Spotify, Apple, leave a review. Don't be lazy, because the hopeful majority requires people to get active and get engaged. And so with that, I'm so excited to talk to Prian. Prian Potts, welcome to the hopeful majority, sir.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I love your name too, Hopeful Majority. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah, it's a play off of the silent majority, the moral majority. There's always majorities, and my thought was that there's a lot of people out there in the world that feel that it's too toxic and too polarizing, and I think the last way you get them active is by calling them the silent majority. So you might as well make it hopeful.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I'm all about positivity.
So tell me, in the introduction we described you as a partner at a law firm, but one of the things you've really invested the last, it sounds like 8-9 years into, is campaign finance and this issue of money in politics. Tell us about your journey into that issue, and tell me why this is an issue that animates you right now.
Well, I think it's the most important issue facing at least the United States government. I think politics and who the politicians are obviously dictates what the policies are of the government. And we're in a situation, and have been for years now, where the people who get to influence those politicians are the ones with all the money. The corporations and the executives of those corporations are usually the ones who are bankrolling the politicians. And so what happens is, you or I might give a politician $200 or $50 or $10 or whatever it is, and they're giving the politician millions. Which one do you think they're going to listen to? And so I honestly believe, and my wife also is a lawyer and was a politician, and so I saw her go through knocking on doors for money, calling people for money, and the whole system seemed screwed up. And so we knew as lawyers that the Supreme Court has already said that corporations get to have a political voice and get to put money in. We know that the Supreme Court isn't going to change that opinion anytime soon, given its makeup. And so we thought, well, what's a way to address this? And the way is to basically weaponize the data against the corporations. And so that's what we've done.
And just taking a step back, let's take for granted, the argument that money in politics is a bad thing, because it does sound like the court decided that utilizing money in our politics is under the right of free speech. You're a lawyer. It would be bad practice for me to not ask what your opinion is on, one, Citizens United, and two, why they came to the decision that money is an exercise of speech.
Well, you'd have to ask the justices themselves. Personally, I think it's bad policy. Whether it's constitutional or not is up to the Supreme Court themselves. So it's really was a judgment call by the court on what those justices wanted and thought was the right policy or the right approach to free speech. And this is what we're left with. I don't agree with that. From a very high level, I think corporations are not people. pretty obviously. In fact, that's why we create corporations, so that we can insulate people from liability. So it's kind of silly to me that now these corporations are people and have free speech. But regardless of that, the point is that debate isn't going to matter. You and I debating, everyone debating, Congress can't even do anything. The only people who can change this are the 9 justices of the Supreme Court, and there's no indication that that's going to happen anytime soon. So we're in this world. And if we're in this world, why wouldn't we want to hear what these corporations are saying with their political speech? And that's what this is all about. We are allowing you to reclaim your political voice by paying attention to and listening to and reacting to what corporations are doing with the money in politics. So we make it free in an app.
So we're going to get to the app because I think it's something interesting that folks might want to look into a little bit further. But I'm curious, and this might sound like a naive question, but why would companies want to get involved in politics, given that it sounds like politics is a shit show and business prefers stability? Why would companies want to wade into politics?
Influence. And there's the so that's changing, and we're changing that, and that's what we're focusing on. You actually hit the nail on the head in that if it's a problem for their consumers, that changes their calculus of why they would put this money into the politics or not. And historically, they've only done it basically to lobby the members of Congress to either regulate them less or give them government contracts or create whatever insulation they can from their competitors through laws. So they're basically purchasing, for lack of a better word, laws that help the corporation. And it's makes sense. If you're the corporation and you're the shareholders and you're the CEO, you should be doing that because that's now legal, right? And it's an avenue for you to do it. But when they've been doing that for the last 30, 40, 50 years, very, very few people have paid attention in any detail when they spend their money. When you go to the grocery store, when you go to bank or buy a car, very few people have paid that close attention back when we started the app in 2017. And I think that's changed a lot, actually. And we're partly we've had some influence on that, which is cool. It's not fixed, though. We need more people.
So, what is the app that you designed as your solution to money in politics, and what is it called?
Goods unite us. We also are on TikTok. Got a lot of followers and I do some silly TikToks.
I'd love to see that one day. I'll check it out right after.
You should. It's pretty funny. We do some funny things. Yeah, Goods unite us. We've had
The kids have really taken over when a partner at a law firm is spending his time making TikTok videos.
exactly. I'm definitely unique in that regard. The beauty of TikTok as a law firm partner is nobody else in the law firm is on TikTok. So nobody knows I'm making TikTok videos. But
Well, now they'll know. Now they'll
yeah,
know.
now they know,
So
maybe.
so but tell me, so the app and what the solution is.
Yeah, so the app makes it easy to shop according to your politics. In other words, to pay attention to who you're spending money with. Maybe it's, for example, Angel Soft toilet paper. Most people don't know that's owned by the Koch brothers. Do you want to have Angel Soft toilet paper if you're a Democrat? And Apple is super progressive and democratic. Maybe if you're a Republican, you don't want to buy an iPhone, you want to buy an Android because they're more in line. Google's actually not, but I think they make Android, or is that Samsung? I can't remember. Anyway, the app is super easy. It's free, and we have 5,000 or more brands and companies. And what we've done, and so there's a nonprofit called Open Secrets, which is great and been around since 1981, and they've been trying to out money in politics. But the problem is, it wasn't super usable by everyday people for shopping and easy access. And what we figured out is what you need to do is look at the whole corporate chain all the way up and down, who owns who, what brands do they own, aggregate all that money and figure out what the political impact is. And so that's what the apps do for you for free.
Hmm.
Now we recently implemented a new I think this is even cooler feature, which is people have been weirded out about. A lot of people get weirded out about Democrat, Republican. They just don't feel comfortable identifying with one or the other. And so, and they get weirded out by the divisiveness of Democrat, Republican, which I get. And so, what we've done is actually now we track the money from the company to the politicians and map the politicians' voting records on 16 issues. So now you can say, for example, this is real data. Charles Schwab and their executives have given something like $40 million over the last few federal election cycles, and 96% has gone to fight LGBTQ plus rights, DEI, environment, and environmental regulations. And so we can track the money now from the companies all the way to the specific issue that you might care about on both sides. So we're making it easy for people to see what the impact of their shopping and investing is.
So you've built an app that essentially empowers consumers and customers to understand how the companies they give money to vote in our politics through their
Exactly.
money and through their
On
influence.
exact issues now.
So what is this might be a reductive question, but out of curiosity, do you have any idea of what the most Republican company is and what the most Democratic company is based on how they're spending money in politics? Or is
Oh
that
yeah,
something that you could look up and we could figure
I
out by the end of the show?
for sure. That's easy. I can look that up. I have a high powered. So our more our premium version, which does cost $19 a month. It's called Index Align, and it's the one that tracks all 16 issues. We have some of it in the app for a much cheaper premium, so you can get the basic ideas. But
I think it would be remiss to not ask where's the money that you guys make go?
so, first of all, we're a startup, so we're not net profit overall, but we don't donate very much. We would be in the de minimis amount. You can look us up in the app. Actually, of course, we put ourselves in there because this is about transparency. Um, but if you want to know, for example, who were the biggest donors to Republicans, I can tell you that right now. It is here are the top five overall donors to Republicans, and these are of publicly traded companies: Tesla, Las Vegas Sands,
Mhm.
Blackstone, Charles Schwab, and Oracle.
Interesting. And let's go on the Democratic side.
Yeah, let's look at that. So Democratic, and this is easy to do on Index Align. It's a little trickier to figure out with the app. But number one, Amalgamated Bank. Number two, Asana. I don't even know what that is. Number three is Google. Four is Bank of America, and five is Microsoft.
Wow, that's fascinating. So now that we've exposed those companies, what I have to ask is you made this interesting example of, let's say Charles Schwab gives 40 or $50 million to a member of Congress, and then you can see their voting record, right? Now, let's steel man that for a quick second. On the company side, they're likely not giving the money for the entire legislative record of a member of Congress. They're probably focused on one specific issue. So, how do you correlate their investment to making the jump that this company supports this party or this political platform?
Yeah. So again, we're trying to empower the consumers, right? And the investors. And so if you want to invest in Microsoft, I want to know Microsoft gave X dollars. Who did what kinds of issues did the politicians that got that vote on? And what was the overall impact of that? So that's what we're looking at. We're not saying Microsoft is anti DEI because they gave money and the politicians, they gave money to happen to vote against DEI and they didn't know that. Like, we're not attributing knowledge. In fact,
Mm.
most of the companies don't even know this. They probably haven't. I mean, they know what they're giving their PAC money to, and most people know the politics of the executives of the company that work there. And that's actually a funny thing. We get a lot of comments from people who work at companies and they look it up and they're always like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Mm.
so One thing I'll say is like when you download the app, this is going to happen to you, and you start looking in it. There's categories in there, so you could pick like shoes and look at your shoe brand. And what will happen is you're going to get sad because brands you like are going to be impacting things you don't like.
Hmm.
And so it can be very eye opening when you first look at it.
Do you think there is an actual link between people getting more educated about the way in which the companies that they're buying products from are voting in their politics and them actually shifting their consumer behavior?
Yes, a
Okay.
thousand percent.
Do you have is there data on that, or I'm just curious, like, what is that behavioral?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we've been doing this for long enough. I mean, we have definitely impacted tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in purchasing already, just through people have messaged us on our app for since 2017. I bought this car and not this car because Toyota was blue and Mazda was red, for example. That's not
Mm.
actually accurate. Look
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one up.
yeah.
But that's the point. They bought this instead of this and some really big ticket items. And I was just like, holy shit, people, this is really working. And then the reason I know it works is because we get cease and desist letters from big companies and we've shut down their call centers because we did like a social media post about Chico's a few years ago. And this was before we even blew up after Trump. And all the users called their call center and got pissed that they were Republican. And they had a New York law firm send us a cease and desist letter. They didn't know we were lawyers. So I just laughed in their face and they went away. But this is proof, right? Like
Hmm.
these companies now are having to pay attention to it because more people know about what they're doing. And it's linear.
And draw the link between people shifting their consumer behavior and how you think that resolves sort of the root cause problem that really animated you originally, which is that money in politics is sort of a core root cause from your perspective for a lot of problems in the country.
Okay, so the easiest way to understand it is that most of these companies, the bigger ones, let's say Apple, they're selling, they're doing billions in revenue every year. So even if 1% of their, or less, 1/10 of 1% of their consumers change their purchasing behavior, that's hundreds of millions of dollars in difference to them. Meanwhile, they're only donating 30, 40 million over multiple election cycles. So why the hell would they do that? What now would they donate 30 million to lose hundreds of millions?
Hmm.
They're rational companies. They won't. And now some of them will.
Do you think do you think the rational response would be that they stop putting money into politics, or do you think the rational response would be, oh, let's actually give some money to the other side that these people are focused on?
Yeah, so that's why we track both. And we actually encourage people like our thumbs up. You only get a thumbs up in our app if you don't give.
And it's zero, like no giving.
And it's well, it's de minimis because it's executive. So I think it's like if the total amount of everybody's is less than 5 or 10 grand, then it's de minimis, and we say okay, because obviously people should be able to donate if that's what's allowed. That's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for outsized influence. But yeah, so the money works out. And then the investment side, which we haven't talked about, I think is even more fascinating and more impactful. But we just,
But before I agree, actually, but before we get to the investment side, I just want to close the loop on this. I could see a critic of the app arguing that really what happens is, let's say Toyota's, or let's take one of the examples you said. Microsoft gives a lot of money to Democrats. I'm a consumer. I'm a Republican. I love Windows, and now I hate Windows. So I post online. I say, "Goods unite us," shows me that Microsoft gives to Democrats, and I hate the communists, and so I'm going to now boycott Microsoft.
yeah, that just
Is
happened to
micro
Netflix,
so
by the
is
way.
Microsoft's response, okay, let's now give some money to Republicans?
It could
Because
be,
the
but that's
or is their response, let's stop putting money into politics? Because one
either
could
way,
argue that their
we win.
interests are more valuable than that person's boycott.
The beauty is, in my view, either way we win because now the company has to pay attention to what it's doing with its money and think about the ramifications of what it's doing. It's never had to do that before. it just does whatever it wants and nobody knows. And so, even if, which I think isn't going to happen, we're already seeing the amount of corporate money go down over multiple election cycles. So my strong suspicion is most companies are going to just not give. They're going to institute policies where their executives can't give to politics, and they would only give PAC money to industry groups that are doing like road building stuff or whatever their industry group is. You know, the tech industry group, those kinds of PACs, and they would stop this, and they would, because why? It's not worth it to let your executive give 5 million of their money to Trump, for example, if all of a sudden Netflix is going to lose 10 million subscribers. So that's the idea. Now, there, of course, there's going to be some like oil and gas where it's an existential thing to their business to buy politicians, and this probably won't impact that.
Got it. That's a fascinating view that for the businesses where literally not donating is not really that reflective of their business, you could see potential shifts. But for others there might not. But the central viewpoint of your prediction that hey, maybe executives actually just can't give money to politics is an interesting one. I guess the skeptic in me is thinking that the level of impact and influence that a company gets through giving money into politics could really only be curbed by governmental reform as opposed to consumer behavior shifts. But the optimist in me wants you to be right because I think that in our
But again, what's the governmental reform? There isn't one. It's the Supreme Court. That's the only person that can fix it. That's the problem. And so until we get a Supreme Court, the government, that's the only way. The Congress can't do it. No one else in government can do it. It's only the Supreme.
what about an amendment?
Yeah, but that's like even less likely than getting the Supreme Court because it's a huge hassle and it's just not likely. I'm all for it. Great. I think it should be an amendment, but practically speaking, the most likely scenario is the Democrats take back the Supreme Court and then overturn it. But that's at least 5 to 10 years out,
Got it.
just based on the current makeup of the court. And it's been 5 to 10 years out for a long time. So it basically, we don't have a governmental choice, is my thing. And so
Hmm.
this is our only way to fight back.
Yeah, I guess the again the concern I've always had with companies and it relates to politics is there's this term that myself and a board member of ours, Patrick McGinnis, came up with called tribal capitalism. The idea being that like companies actually utilize politics to drive their business. So in fact, what they would do as a result of more insight into consumer behavior and politics, they would just lean into it. Like Black Rifle Coffee Company, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're sort of like the conservative version of Starbucks, and they both now just play on politics. Now with the new CEO at Starbucks, I think maybe your prediction might be right. He's just like, screw all this. Let's just actually focus on making good coffee and like
Sell to everybody.
yeah, and like just get back to where we were. But I'm always concerned that I think part of the reason why we're more polarized is that it has become a profit incentive to lean into politics in some ways, and so that's why I'm curious if more information about political behavior actually leads to more lean into uh, politicization.
It could, and there are 1 in 5 people that I meet that just think what we're doing is terrible and causing more divisiveness. And I fundamentally disagree with that. I think providing more transparency is
Mhm.
always a good thing. But there are a not insignificant portion of the population who get very mad at me when I tell them about this. And it's
Yeah,
interesting. I'm fine. I'll have the debate and it's fine. And everybody has their own opinion and they don't have to use the app if they don't want. It's a
yeah,
free
yeah.
app. But it is interesting. So anyway, I think we should like the investing side. I think is cool.
Well, yeah. So that's where I want to take you next. So you said the investing side is more powerful, and I'll just give you some context on why I'm curious about this. We had on Vivek Ramaswamy way back in the day when he was running for president on the show, and one of the things that he built was I think it was called Strive Capital.
Oh, I know. I already wrote an article bashing him and Fortune. He got really mad.
Vivek built an investing vehicle that actually did have some impact because that actually affects shareholders. Now, his mission was obviously different than yours, but I'm curious. Tell us about the investing side and why you think that's more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't know anything about investing when I stumbled upon ESG in 2020 and sort of said, and if you don't know what ESG is, it's environmental, social, and governance. And basically, there's outside rating firms that rate big companies on their environmental, social, and governance risk and performance. And then people wrap up these ETFs, they're called, but index funds based on environment or whatever issue. And so someone was explaining this, and I kind of laughed in their face and was like, "These companies don't even know what their environmental impact is. I'm an environmental lawyer originally. Like, what are you talking about? There's no way an outside rating firm could rate these companies on their environmental impact." And then I hung up and realized that I have the economics of the C-suite. What is going to tell you more about a company's values and decision making than the politics of the people who are making all those decisions? And so we did an analysis with an ESG company and found a statistical correlation, not surprising, between Democrat and high ESG scores. And then we had a bunch. I basically found a guy named Jason Britton, who's the fund manager, and he teaches impact investing at the College of Charleston. And he loved this data because it's real. He got fed up with ESG because a lot of it isn't real. It's just kind of very subjective, made up data about companies. And there's this like weird feedback loop where the company writes a sustainability report and somebody reads it and rates them on their sustainability report. And anyway, so that's how DEMS came about. And so in 2020, we launched an index fund, is what it's called. It's an S&P 500 tracking fund. And so if you know what the S&P 500 is, it's the 500 largest U.S. companies. And we call out, make the investable universe only the ones in there that have given 75% or more to Democrats over the last 3 federal election cycles. So not just last election, but over the last 3. And that's about 120 companies, turns out, in every sector of the economy except one. And so Jason, the fund manager, created a product that tracks the whole market using only the Democratic companies from the market. I like to think of it as the S&P without the GOP. And we launched in 2020. And there's a term, this is nerdy, I've learned all this, but beta, do you know what beta is?
I do, but I think you should
Okay.
provide some
Most people
context.
don't know what beta is. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So beta is how
I
closely
went to one of
something.
those nerdy schools where half my friends became investment bankers. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So beta tracks the closer you are to 1 is how closely you're tracking the whole S&P 500,
Yeah.
basically, as I understand it. And so our beta is 1.03 after 5 years, meaning we're 97% of the time, roughly 95, 97, tracking the whole market. And we've slightly outperformed over 5 years. So
Does that just mean that all the Democrats run your top 5 tech companies, or does that mean that you just happen to have a stronger correlation with your fund?
no, it's sector weighted the same. So most people say, "Oh, that's just because you're tech heavy," but by definition, we can't be. We have sector weighting that has to match the whole S&P. So if tech in the S&P is 25%, we have to be roughly 25%. And we actually are underweight, like Nvidia and some of the other ones, because there's this thing called the diversification rule that says you can't have more than 5% of any one thing. Well, some of these companies now have more than 5% of the whole S&P 500. So
Right.
it actually is really interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and so like Barron's just did a podcast about it and said if you thought Democratic companies do worse under Trump, look at Dems. But then they go on to bash the idea that politics would have any impact on performance, which I think is a little silly to just
Uh-huh.
dismiss without thinking about it. But anyway, so how this might
What do you hope to achieve with what's the vision behind having the investment vehicle?
say it's the same. If so, think about it this way. Let's say Dems gets bigger. It's at 50 million AUM now. Let's say it gets to a couple hundred million. Now we're a shareholder of all these companies. right? And so we can shareholder proxy, try to get money out of politics that way. And if you're the CEO of all the companies who aren't in DIMS, and there are financial products that basically you're giving is cutting out, is hurting your stock price, what do you think is going to happen?
Mm,
That's the thing the CEO cares the most about. They want to be in as many ETFs as they can because they want their share price to go up. And
right.
so it's the same basic argument on the investment side. It's just that there are about $5 trillion in these
Mm,
S&P index funds. Meaning I guarantee if you have any stock, you own an S&P 500 index fund, which
hmm.
means you own stock in ExxonMobil, AT&T, and T, and Home Depot. And if those companies don't align with your values, why do you own them? You
Right.
don't have to buy DIMS, buy something else, but don't buy stock
Yeah.
in companies that are undermining your values.
I guess that's where I get hold up. Is the argument is that they're undermining your values, so don't support them. Why is the rational response then for the company to do the neutral thing, which is just to not advance or support your values, and instead it's to just exist? Because me as the consumer, like if I see a ticker, right, and if I'm informed about those top 5 companies, what, Las Vegas Sands, Sheldon, like I know all those folks, right? And so like when you think about all the understanding their politics, it's hard for me to believe that the rational response from the consumer is become neutral, and instead the rational response is not, okay, now support my values.
No, I think the consumer would support their values. What I'm saying is that the consumer dollar, the revenue, is so much more, and the stock price investment is so much more important to these companies than letting their CEO independently give money to politicians. And so,
So you think that because of that pressure, the company's rational response would be, let's just step out of this.
exactly.
Okay.
That's what this is all about. And
Okay.
if there's enough consumers doing it, the companies will have to. And I think we're going to get to that tipping point pretty soon because we've had 2.5 million people come through our app, and it's going to take a little while for this to percolate really through the companies and the backlash and companies get
Yep.
calls and consumers. So we'll see. But
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. We're fighting money in
Well,
politics by weaponizing it.
and that's what I think is fascinating, is that you have an offensive strategy. It's actually a strategy I've not come across as frequently. We've had some folks on the show that have other approaches to getting money out of politics. But it's interesting to hear how you're thinking about actually deploying the capitalist economy to actually execute that.
Yeah, that's my whole shtick. I'm into using capitalism to fix things, not because it is what it is. Like,
Yep.
if you
Yep.
don't like capitalism, good luck trying to change the government to get rid of capitalism.
So, Brian, this is a question that we ask every guest on the hopeful majority, and that is a question about trying to get an understanding of your purpose. Like, why do you actually do what you do? And the reason why we always ask this question is because my view is that one of the ways you depolarize politics is even the people you disagree with, you might actually align with their purpose, their why, the underlying values. And so I love to sort of get an understanding of what drives people. And so as we conclude the show, like, why do you care, and what drives you as it relates to Good Unite Us, and broadly the work that you do?
Well, actually, ironically, the when I was in college, I decided that my highest and best use was to siphon as much money off the economy as possible and buy land and conserve it when I die.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
and so I've always been into the lean into capitalism and then do good things. And
It's
then
fascinating.
now, though, with Goods Unite Us, it was a very intentional. Like, I'd already started another company that made money, but it was a keyboard for lawyers and it was boring. And so with Goods Unite Us, I was like, if I'm going to do this and put my time in, I want to do something that is actually going to or could have a significant impact on the world.
Mm.
And so then it's just been fun. I mean, we've been doing it for 8 years. I've been pushing this rock up a hill for a long time, but I'm seeing things change. It's slow. Everything's slow. It's way slower than anybody wants, but it's been fascinating. So that's all I can say. I don't know. I'm a weird human. I can't sit still.
It's fascinating. And what I guess I'm just curious. What is the biggest obstacle to uh, Goods Unite Us scaling and growing right now?
Cutting through the noise.
Okay.
It's really, really, really hard. I mean, you got to scream into the wind for a long time as an app, unless you got a lot of money to get enough people to pay attention. And so I feel like we haven't done any marketing in the last couple of years. It's all come from influencers online and people who've been using our app for years promoting it themselves. And that's really been the difference maker. So doing things like this is great because it gets the word out. And that's the hard part. There's just, there's so few ways to get in front of people unless you have millions of dollars or own a news channel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the thing that I've been excited about is I think also the rise of independent media as a good sort of, I think, counterweight, because in a lot of cases podcasts have more listeners than a lot of the shows out there. I think it's just a question of trying to scale it up. But thank you, Brian, so much for what you do. Especially, it fascinates me to find folks that are invested in trying to make the world a better place while they have like other full time careers and jobs, and like that's really important because we need more people engaged and active. And if you're listening to the show and you completely disagree with everything that Brian said, you should come back next week because chances are you'll find some more disagreement. That's a good thing. And if you very much agreed with everything that Brian said, check out his app. The point of this show is it's really interesting for me to have conversations with people of different views that are trying to tackle really interesting problems so that we can actually realize that the people out there are generally motivated by a lot of positive things. It's just about trying to get behind their values and understanding those. And so, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for everybody listening. Remember, every Monday, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your content, the hopeful majority. I know the background has changed. People have been talking about this. I moved in the last 2 weeks, but the eagle is still here, people. The eagle is still here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week.